Some other big news happening today. President Trump set to host Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky at Mar-a-Lago this afternoon in his final effort of the year to end the war between Russia and Ukraine.
Madeline Rivera joins us live in Washington, D.C. with the details. Hi, Maddie.
Good morning. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky says they've made many compromises in this 20-point plan to try and get this war to an end. But there are still sticking points like territorial issues, control of a Russian-occupied power plant, and security guarantees. Last week, Zelensky reportedly said Ukraine would be willing to pull back troops in eastern Ukraine if Russia does the same and the area turns into a demilitarized zone. It's a tough concession. Now, Axios reports Zelensky is hoping to go one step further by holding a referendum on territorial concessions, leaving the decision up to the Ukrainian people. In order to hold the vote, though, Zelensky says there must be a ceasefire. Yet Russia continues to attack Ukraine, carrying out a massive drone attack in Kyiv over the weekend. Zelensky says it shows Russia does not have an appetite to stop the fighting.
This attack is, again, Russia's answer on our peace efforts, and it's really shows that Putin doesn't want peace, and we want peace. And tomorrow I will have, I hope, very important and very constructive meeting with President Trump.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says it's Ukraine who's in no hurry for peace, and he's issuing this warning. Putin said that if Ukraine did not want to resolve the conflict peacefully, then Russia would accomplish all goals of its special military operation by force, and that is from a Russian state news agency. President Trump's meeting with Zelensky is happening at 1 p.m. local time. Charlie, Lisa, and Griff.
All right.
Thank you, Maddie.
Thanks, Maddie.
And, you know, it's important to keep in mind that as this meeting occurs and, you know, there's this renewed effort to try to bring about peace, what is the reaction, as it often is, from Vladimir Putin, but to escalate, you know, firing rockets into Kyiv and into Ukraine, which, of course, intensifies all sides and intensifies all the acrimony that Donald Trump is trying to sort of undo.
Yeah, so let's unpack this, because here we are at the end of the year. And to your point, Charlie, Putin has consistently said that he has demanded full control of the Donbass region, where we've seen the fighting in eastern Ukraine, and he's been sort of unmovable on that position. But Zelensky now has started to move his views. Now, let's start back in February of this year. We had that contentious Oval Office meeting with Zelensky, right? We've did a timeline here for you. Then by April, Trump meets with Zelensky on the sidelines of Pope Francis's funeral. Then August was the big one. Remember that Alaska summit? We had President Trump and Putin meeting there in hopes that Putin might be moved by President Trump's diplomacy. You also had, by the way, Melania Trump, who back-channeled directly with Putin to rescue children, Ukrainian children that had been kidnapped into Russia. That's a significant thing in here. Then you've got Zelensky convening with Trump and EU leaders at the White House a little bit later in August. Then we get to fall, and Trump and Zelensky meet here in New York at the United Nations General Assembly. Zelensky in October returns to the White House for that lunch. We still don't have quite the movement that we are expecting to hear about today, but certainly things have started to move as this 20-point plan starts coming in to focus. And then today, of course, the meeting at Mar-a-Lago, which we'll see what Putin reacts to it. But I think the major takeaway here for our viewers that have watched all year long is that for the first time, you've got President Zelensky willing to say, well, I don't want to concede land, because he said he won't concede land from the beginning, but maybe he would withdraw troops out of the Donbass region, right, the Donetsk and Luhansk region, for security guarantees. Those security guarantees look like the Article 5 NATO sort of stuff, where that if Russia and Putin were to further attack, then the EU would lean in and protect them.
Well, you also have the Ukrainian people have to approve any sort of territory concessions as well. So that's a sticking point for Zelensky in this and for the Ukrainian people as well. You know, I know a lot of folks will say, well, why has President Trump put some pressure on Zelensky to try to end this war? But we've also given them an enormous amount of money, and Ukraine has been completely reliant on upon Western money to keep in this fight. And so, Americans have kind of reached a threshold of like, look, we've given them a lot of money. When is this thing going to end? So I think maybe that's part of that as well. But yeah, Maddie laid out some of these major sticking points. Territory. That's a big deal. Who owns, which territory in Ukraine? You've also got the security guarantees that the Ukrainian people want, that Zelensky wants, but Russia doesn't want Ukraine to be part of NATO. And then you have this nuclear plant as well. Who controls it? What does that look like as well? And then Russia is frustrated over these sanctions that have been, placed on Russia as well. So you've got a lot of these different sticking points. President Trump trying to apply pressure in all these different arenas to try to end this war. That's always been his objective. He doesn't like war.
Let's go back and look at some of the video from some of these meetings between President Trump and Zelensky.
Gave you military equipment, and you men are brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days. I heard it from Putin. In 3 days.
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
So we're going from that to yet another meeting today where, in a Truth Social post, President Trump back in November writing, I look forward to hopefully meeting with President Zelensky and President Putin soon, but only when the deal to end the war is final or in its final stages. Obviously, we don't know exactly how this will end, and President Trump has said numerous times that, that he thought that this would be the easiest one of the problems around the globe to solve. It's turned into one of the thorniest, one of the most difficult. He has criticized both Putin and Zelensky for being hard-headed and very difficult to deal with to try to reach a resolution. But obviously, President Trump is hopeful that we are in the final glide path towards peace.
And I just want to point out, too, that this is just another arena of problems that President Trump has to address because of Joe Biden and Democrat failures. I mean, if you remember, Russia invaded Crimea under Obama. And then Russia invaded Ukraine again under Joe Biden because we had weakness at the helm of the White House, and Russia saw an opportunity. And so now President Trump is stuck trying to clean up this big mess.
He is, and we're going to talk with Dan Hoffman in a little bit about all this because, the new thing here is this talk of a demilitarized zone and withdrawal of troops. Exactly how that works, I don't know.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.